Hi, I'm Mars from StrataGames, and today I'm talking about Black Sac, specifically Perigee Beckoner and its impact on the deck, and has the deck evolved to the point where it needs Perigee Beckoner to be the best version of itself? Is the version without Perigee Beckoner completely obsolete? Or is there a world where both can exist and do their own thing? In order to dive into some of these questions, we need to look at a little bit of history from the deck. Obviously, some sort of Aristocrats deck has existed in Pauper for a long time, not necessarily a tiered deck, but one that you could play and have some fun with. But the deck in its current iteration, as far as I know, originated with LoveCrayons. They are another Pauper content creator. You should make sure to check them out. But they started playing this list and uploading videos of it about 10 months ago, played several leagues with it, and then they went to the Pauper Super Qualifier and came 9th out of 160 players. And this video went up February 23rd this year. I then saw this video, thought the deck had tons of potential, and decided to play it myself. And the first video that I put out with the deck was on February 28th, 5 days later. From there, I played the deck every week or two, pretty consistently, and have put out dozens of videos on it at this point. But the important thing to note is that the deck started being played in February. I then compiled every single challenge finish with Black Sac, as well as every single trophy that we've seen since February this year, so that's a little over 8 months ago. And this is the data that I've come up with. So the earliest challenge placement that we got was from me a couple days after that in March 2nd, where I got a top 8 challenge. This is not necessarily the best way to organize this, but this is just what I did. The first column is placements with Beckoners in their list. The second column is without Beckoners in their list. So March got top 8, and then we also have our trophies here. There was only one trophy in February, actually, the day that I put out my first video. We had one trophy win with Calicus, obviously before Edge of Eternities. All of the trophies are going to be with no Beckoner in them, but one trophy is not bad. In March, we didn't pick up much either. We also had just one trophy from M Sales, getting one on the 8th, as well as that challenge top 8 that I got. But going into April, we started to pick up quite a bit. Quite a few more people were picking up the deck. Entropete, more M Sales, Budzik, and Trafka each got one or more trophies across the month. In April, we did not get any additional challenge placements, as nobody was really playing the deck in the challenges at all. I assume this was because people maybe started getting a couple trophies with the deck, but didn't necessarily see it as a viable way to actually win a challenge. And then going into May, we had 17 trophies. Let me grow this a little bit so that it's actually easier to read. 17 trophies by 10 different players, and multiple trophies by some of the same people, including myself, Entropete, M Sales, Not Robin Taylor, and Danny Ground. In May, we also saw a couple more challenge finishes, 2 top 8s from me and Savage Samba, and a top 16 by Kerblinski. So now a few more people picking it up for challenges. 17 trophies is not bad at all, especially when compared to a deck like Mono Blue Terror that I just checked had 53 trophies in May, which is only a little over 3 times as much, which is certainly a lot, but comparing essentially a brand new deck as of a month or two ago to a very well established deck that has been in the top 3 decks in the format for a very long time, I think this shows a ton of promise. This is also, I would say, roughly when the deck found its bearings in terms of having an established deck list. This is when I put out my stock list, and most people had settled on a list that they liked playing. And so this is really the month that shows that the deck can do some work. However, then over the summer, in June and July, the number of trophies went down quite a bit, down to 2 in June, 5 in July. And as far as challenge wins, the only ones that really showed up were top 32s, a couple in June and a couple in July. Now, to me, that reads as maybe people weren't playing as much over the summer or something like that. Unfortunately, the main data piece that I'm missing, that I just don't really know how to find, is how many people were actually playing the deck, because 17 trophies is a good amount, 2 trophies is not a very good amount, but how many people were actually playing the deck in each of these months? Because if people just dropped the deck for no good reason, really, after such a good month, then perhaps this data is not fully representative of what it should be. Anybody who would see, oh, well, we went from 17 to 2 in a month, means probably the deck is just dead. I can understand that, but did people just stop playing the deck? Were there just fewer people playing in general? I don't really have that information, so a little hard to draw a conclusion there. But then we get into August. August 1st is when Edge of Eternities dropped, and Perigee Beckoner was introduced into the format. And Beckoner was a card that people had been talking about for a couple of weeks while it had been shown off. So day 1, there were 2 trophies made with it. One from Kerblinski, who made a video with that trophy. And Pauper is a small enough format that the larger content creators who make videos for it, especially when they get a trophy with a deck that is new, or at least new in some way, that can have a large impact on how people perceive the new meta or the new way to play a deck. So Kerblinski making a video day one, getting a trophy with Beckoner, I am confident had some impact on the fact that people saw this as the de facto way to play the deck going forward. And then we had a great month in August, 31 trophies playing Beckoner, and only a single trophy not playing Beckoner. Obviously, with such a crazy number of trophies, especially playing Beckoner versus not playing Beckoner, it looks like that might be the way to play the deck. However, I think that might be a bit of an oversimplification though. Obviously, people who are already playing Black Sac are going to try out the brand new card because maybe it'll be really good. And people who don't play the deck will see a new card, see that the deck's gotten a few trophies already, and then try that as well. So I think the hype of the new card, in addition to the fact that it is not bad in the deck, pushed a lot of people to start getting these trophies. And so, again, I don't have the data of who is playing what, but I think it's very unlikely that the same number of people were playing the deck list without Beckoner as were playing it with Beckoner. In fact, I would be surprised if there were more than a handful of people playing it without a Beckoner when the Beckoner was brand new. Even I was trying it out. We also get some more challenge finishes in August. 4 top 32s, 2 with Beckoner and 2 without, 5 top 16s, a top 8, a top 4 from yours truly, and even a challenge win on the last day of the month from Natalino91. As you probably know, generally when a deck gets a single trophy, that is a small indication that the deck might have some potential. That's the first step that people say, hey, this might be a deck I want to try out, and maybe we can make something of it. Then if a deck gets a top 8, that's another way to push it to, okay, this can really be a contender in the meta. Because to get a top 8, you generally need to go 5-3 or 6-2, something like that. But then, of course, a challenge win is a huge boon for the deck, showing that it can go up against everything, even the best decks, the best players in the format. So there's just this thing that's hard to quantify. Did the deck get a challenge win because Perigee Beckoner is good enough to push the deck over the edge, or because Perigee Beckoner was helping the deck get some notoriety and then there were more players and supposedly more good players playing the deck? Was that enough to just get a trophy win? Jumping topics a little bit, there's also a bit of a feedback loop if you use a site like MTG Goldfish. There's nothing wrong with using it for some data, but it's not 100% accurate. Right now it shows Black Sac as 3.8% of the meta, which is absolutely great, but when we click into here and you start checking the decks in the side, any Black Sac list that you find is going to have Perigee Beckoner in here. Something in their algorithm has said that a deck with a Perigee Beckoner is a Black Sac deck, and one without it is not. For example, if you go to my recent finishes, that top 8 that I got here, 3rd place, doesn't show Black Sac. Even though we have Esper Affinity, we have John Wildfire, it's just B. Going into that, you can see that this is a Black Sac list. It just doesn't happen to include Beckoner, but it is not put under the Black Sac archetype. So if somebody goes to MTG Goldfish and says, oh, Black Sacrifice looks like a deck I want to play, let's check out what the best list is. They search through a couple 5.0s and see every single list has a Perigee Beckoner. They're going to naturally assume that is the only way to play the deck. Although, to throw a further loop into this a little bit, Goldfish has also been grouping a lot of Golgari Gardens decks in with Black Sacrifice, as if they contain a Shambling Ghast in them. This is very clearly not a Black Sac deck, but it's put under here. And this is a Sultai Fairies list. Doesn't look anything like our deck, except that it has a Shambling Ghast in it. So you have to be a little wary of what they're putting here. This easily could be 3.8% of the meta, but it's adding Golgari Gardens and it's not adding actual Black Sac decks. Pressing on though into September, we have 17 trophies from Beckoner lists, the same amount that we had in May for lists without Beckoner, as well as 6 trophies with a non-Beckoner list. What changed from August to September? Well, probably just the newness factor of Beckoner being a brand new card. It's always possible that the deck also has been countered a little bit better. People are putting sideboard cards or just know how to play against the deck better. So that could contribute to there being fewer trophies. But that probably wouldn't have a huge bearing on why there's more non-Beckoner trophies. I assume it's just because either people are trying out the deck and trying out a different version of it. Maybe some people, like me, found that the Beckoner was not really their style and they went to the non-Beckoner version. There's a lot of answers to this. In September, we also ended up with 3 top 32s in challenges, 6 top 16s, 5 top 8s, a top 4, and even another challenge win, most of which included the Beckoner. And finally, going into October, we ended up with 12 trophies with Beckoners, only 3 without. But again, that's dropping numbers, 15 trophies total from 23 the month before and 32 the month before that. It's possible that this is a decline of the deck because it's just not doing as well against the current meta as the meta shifts. But to me, this looks like it might be people getting over the new factor of Beckoner and maybe just dropping the deck for other reasons. Again, without data on how many people are actually playing the deck, it's hard to draw any real conclusions from these. But in total, since Beckoner came out, we've had 60 trophies with it and 10 trophies without it in those last 3 months. Before the Beckoner came out, we had 34 trophies. This was technically across 6 months, but as I mentioned, only 1 trophy in those first couple months. The deck didn't really pick up until April, so about half the trophies in the 4 months preceding Beckoner. But another thing I didn't mention, in August with 32 trophies, we had 20 different people get trophies, because several of these trophies were gotten by the same people. Whereas in May, when we had 17 trophies, only 10 of them were from different people. To me, this is a good indication that there are just more people playing the deck now. And again, there's that difficult question of, are more people playing the deck because it's better, or is the deck doing well because there are more people playing it? I don't unfortunately have a specific conclusion if Beckoner is better or not. My real conclusion is that I think either version has its own merits. Generally, I've seen the Beckoner versions be a little bit grindier, run more card draw, sometimes reaping the graves, sometimes even an extra land, and they're able to play the long game, whereas the non-Beckoner versions that I prefer with lower card draw, a little bit more removal, can still certainly have wins on turn 8 or 9 or something like that, but definitely peter out and lose a little bit more of its power in the late game. I also forgot to mention that in October, in addition to all those trophies, we also got another challenge win, another top 4, a top 8, a few top 16s, and several top 32s. If you like the version with Beckoner, absolutely keep playing it. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem that I've been having is people treating it like the deck didn't exist and is no good without Beckoner. Just today, I had somebody comment on my Black Sac list saying, I think this deck is missing the key combo piece to make it competitive, Perigee Beckoner. And even Paige from the Pauper format panel put out an article a couple weeks ago saying, decks like this have existed for quite some time with players trying to make use of cards like Carrion Feeder, Mortician Beetle, and Bloodthorn Vampire. However, it never really quite seemed to come together until recently with Edge of Eternities. And I just don't think the data shows that. I think the data shows that the deck was really ramping up and doing quite well. Maybe we had a bit of a dry summer. To me, that just reads as fewer people were playing the deck. And certainly we've had a bit of a boom with Beckoner doing well, but the trophies are going down per month. And to me, this does not mean that Beckoner is worse than people think it is or anything like that. It just means that people lose interest over time as the meta shifts. They want to try different new decks, and I think there are 2 different ways that you can play the deck that are totally reasonable. If anyone has any more information that could add to this discussion, feel free to leave a comment. Like I said, I don't necessarily have a perfect conclusion as to which deck is better, but I think the data that I provided shows that the version without Beckoner is not just a terrible deck that was never functioning until Beckoner came along. At the very least, we have 2 parallel decks that operate very similarly with some different cards that both have, I think, a lot of potential. Anyway, thank you so much to my supporters, including my $10 supporters, Howard Granger, Rafa Rodriguez, JDNPX, Jason Golombuski, Halkaz, Cody Cowell, Ill Intent, and Emmanuel Mayer. I really appreciate the support, and I will see you all next time.